The text came through just as I was finishing a late project at work. My phone buzzed against the desk, a soft vibration that somehow carried more weight than it should have. I glanced down expecting something casual, maybe a grocery reminder, maybe a meme. Instead, 6 words arranged themselves into a sentence that snapped my night in half. I think we should open things. For a second, I thought she meant the windows. Or a bottle of wine. Anything but what it really was. Then the second message followed, colder than the first. Only on my side, though. The room seemed to shrink. The hum of the office lights felt suddenly louder. Across from me, Anton looked up from his monitor. You look like you just saw a ghost. I showed him the screen. He whistled low, like someone witnessing a slow-motion accident. Man, that's bold. Her name was Chloe. 26. Beautiful in the way you notice across a crowded room and steady in the way that makes you believe in building a life together. 3 years we'd been together. 1 year living in my apartment. Every photograph on the wall had her smile in it. Every cabinet carried her fingerprints. I sat there staring at those 2 messages, rereading them until the words lost their shape. My chest was heavy, but my mind was razor clear. There was no typo. No accident. This was a choice, typed with deliberate fingers. Anton leaned back in his chair. What are you gonna do? I didn't answer right away. My pulse slowed, not sped up. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just aware, like the air pressure had changed in the room and I was the only one who noticed. I typed back one short line. Let's talk when I get home. Her reply came fast. There's nothing to discuss. I've decided. You don't need anyone else. You're perfect the way you are. It was a strange kind of cruelty, wrapping betrayal in a compliment, like poison inside sugar. I put my phone face down and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the office. That was the night I realized some choices don't require a fight. They require a strategy. By the time I reached the apartment, the city was settling into its night rhythm. Street lamps flickered on. A couple argued on the sidewalk. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked at shadows. I climbed the stairs, rehearsing what I might say, though part of me already knew the script had been written without me. Inside, the air smelled faintly of perfume, something floral, something new. Chloe stood in the living room like she was auditioning for a different life. The dress was fresh from a store bag, the heels a little too high for an ordinary Monday. What do you think? She asked, spinning as though we were playing dress-up, as though she hadn't detonated 3 years of trust 2 hours earlier. I looked at her, then at the glass of wine already half finished on the counter. About the dress? Or the arrangement you texted me about? She laughed lightly, nervously, the kind of laugh people use when they hope you'll let them get away with something. Both. There it was again, the casual cruelty. A bomb disguised as a bouquet. I have a date tonight, she said, and her eyes sparkled like she expected me to share the thrill. Someone from yoga. We've been talking for a while. He understands me. The words slid across the floor like broken glass. We've been talking for a while. Weeks, maybe longer. Long enough to plan, long enough to decide this wasn't a conversation but an announcement. My heartbeat should have been loud, but it wasn't. My body didn't rage or tremble. Instead, there was a steady calm, the kind you feel right before a chess match begins. Sounds fair, I said, the words leaving my mouth smooth as stone. Her smile bloomed instantly, as if she'd won. She kissed me on the cheek, light as ash, and hurried out the door with her purse swinging like a victory flag. The lock clicked behind her, and silence expanded in the room. I walked slowly to the couch, sat down, and let the stillness wrap around me. This wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity. In that quiet, the first moves of a plan began forming, methodical, precise. If she wanted an open door, I would show her what that truly meant. The first few days were a study in restraint. I went to work, came home, and let her chatter about Yoga Boy wash over me like background noise. She thought I was unshaken, maybe even supportive. What she didn't see was the way I was tracing every financial string she tied to me, each one a thread she believed I would never cut. By Wednesday morning, the calm was broken. I was making coffee when she leaned against the doorway, dressed for another night out. Her voice sugar-sweet. "Hey babe, could you send me 200? I want my nails done before tonight. You know, self-care." The request was ordinary, casual, the kind she tossed out 100 times before. But now, with her phone face down on the counter and her new life orbiting elsewhere, it landed like a dare. I set my mug down slowly. "When we were exclusive, I didn't mind covering things. But since you've chosen to explore independence, maybe it's time your dates pay for themselves." Her smile froze, eyes flashing irritation before softening into mock innocence. "Don't be petty. You've always supported me." "Exactly," I said, voice level. "That was when we were a team. Teens share the load. Solo players? They handle their own expenses." The silence between us stretched, taut as a rope. For the first time, she seemed unsure. The confidence she carried out the door on Monday was cracking. Later that night, while she laughed into her phone on the balcony, I logged into my accounts. Netflix. Spotify. Her phone plan. Insurance. The quiet list of invisible luxuries she'd been living on without noticing. I changed the first password with a single keystroke. Just one. Enough to send a signal. An hour later she stormed inside, waving her phone. "Why is Netflix asking me for a code?" I looked up from my laptop, unbothered. "Because it's mine. And I'm reconsidering who gets access." Her jaw dropped, outrage tangled with panic. "You can't just, I can," I interrupted softly. "You want it open. I'm opening everything." Her breath caught. For the first time, she realized the rules of this new game weren't hers to dictate. The calm I'd been holding since Monday shifted into something sharper, colder. This wasn't patience anymore. It was the beginning of consequences. By Thursday, the apartment felt less like home and more like a stage where two people played different scripts. Chloe breezed in and out with her new perfume, her new glow, her phone always lighting with someone else's name. I stayed quiet, measured, letting her believe she held control. But every day I loosened another rope. That evening, the rope snapped. She came stomping from the living room, face flushed. "Why is Hulu asking me to resubscribe? Why can't I get into Spotify? What's your problem?" I didn't even look up from my book. "No problem. Just aligning access with reality." Her voice rose sharp enough to cut. "We share those accounts. That's what couples do. We share when both people are invested," I said evenly. "But you're invested in someone else now." Her mouth opened and closed like she was drowning for air. "So what, you're punishing me? Because I want to grow? Because I need freedom?" The word echoed, freedom. As if it was a badge of courage, not an excuse for betrayal. "You wanted freedom," I said, meeting her eyes at last. "But freedom has costs. You don't get to keep the safety net while you walk the tightrope." For the first time, her confidence cracked. She sank onto the edge of the couch, chewing her lip, and I caught the faintest tremor in her hands. I should have felt pity. 3 years together should have pulled something out of me, sadness, guilt, even nostalgia. Instead, all I felt was a dull ache of recognition. This was who she had been all along. A person who mistook dependence for love and manipulation for honesty. When she grabbed her purse and stormed out muttering about Trevor appreciating her, I knew the break had already begun. The door slammed, and the walls seemed to exhale. That night, I pulled out boxes from storage. One by one, I folded her dresses, packed her shoes, stacked her books. It was meticulous, almost ceremonial. Every item sealed away was another line crossed out from the story we once shared. The lock change was quick. The silence after, quicker. By the time the city fell asleep, the apartment no longer felt divided. It was mine again. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was the spark before the fire. The knock came early Monday, sharp enough to rattle the doorframe. I opened it to find two uniformed officers and Chloe's mother, her face set like she was marching to war. Chloe hovered behind her, hair unkempt, mascara smudged, the shine gone. "Sir," one officer began, "there's been a report of illegal eviction." I almost laughed, but the weight of the moment kept me still. "She was never on the lease," I said, handing over a folder already prepared. Lease agreement, bank statements, texts. Receipts layered like ammunition. The officer flipped through them while Chloe's mother barked accusations. "He abandoned her, he stole her home, he controls everything." But the officer's face stayed blank. Finally, he closed the folder, handed it back. "This is a civil matter, not criminal." He tipped his cap and walked off. The silence that followed was louder than the knock. Chloe stepped forward, eyes wide, desperate now. "Please! You can't just erase me like this. I love you." It should have cracked me. The voice that once pulled me in now felt rehearsed, brittle. "You don't love me," I said quietly. "You love the life I gave you." Her mother lunged as if words could claw me back into their grip, but I shut the door gently, the click of the lock final and echoing in the small apartment. Inside, I leaned against the door, breath heavy. My hand shook, not from fear, but from release. 3 years of small compromises, of excuses made, of blind spots ignored, all collapsed in that one moment. By evening, Chloe had moved the war online. Posts bloomed across Facebook and Instagram. "He's abusive. He isolated me. He ruined my life." Comments piled like dry leaves catching flame. But I was ready. I released my own statement, every screenshot, every date-stamped message, every Venmo request for her. Self-care. The truth unfolded like a court transcript for anyone to see. The tide turned fast. Friends who once whispered doubt now sent messages of support. Strangers I'd never met shared my words. And Chloe's mask, once flawless, began to crack in public view. It wasn't victory I felt. It wasn't triumph. It was quieter than that, an ache that finally had somewhere to rest. The relationship wasn't open anymore. It was over, completely and irrevocably. The court hearing came on a gray morning, the kind where even the sky seemed undecided. Chloe walked in dressed like she was headed to a gala, sequins catching the weak light, confidence stitched into fabric she couldn't afford. I arrived with a plain folder tucked under my arm and the calm of someone who had already lived through the worst of it. The judge skimmed the papers, her voice flat. "Miss Chloe, you were not on the lease. You did not contribute to rent or utilities. You left voluntarily. This is not an eviction. This is a breakup." The laughter that rippled through the courtroom wasn't cruel, it was inevitable. Chloe's face tightened, but the fight drained from her shoulders. Her mother sputtered in protest, but the gavel came down like a period at the end of a sentence. Case dismissed. Outside, Chloe caught up to me. The sequins glittered, but her eyes were hollow. "I loved you," she said, tears trembling but never falling. "How could you throw away 3 years?" I looked at her for what felt like the last time. "I didn't throw them away. You did, when you decided love should be one-sided." For a moment, the city noise wrapped around us, car horns, footsteps, wind pushing between buildings. She wanted me to waver, to open the door just a crack. Instead, I stepped past her, leaving the echo of my words in the air between us. Weeks later, the apartment felt different, lighter. I hung new photos on the walls, ones without forced smiles. I spent weekends climbing at the rock gym with Rebecca, a woman who never asked me to shrink so she could grow. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a compromise. It felt like a horizon. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear Chloe's words echo, only on my side. They no longer sting. They remind me. Love is not ownership. It is not a safety net. It is not freedom for one and captivity for the other. It is a street with 2 lanes, or it is a dead end. And in walking away, I finally learned, endings are not the opposite of beginnings. They are the proof that you've lived, chosen, and survived.